What a fantastic conversation that I just had with my friend Scott Deming. He is a world renowned speaker, author, trainer, and I'm so excited for you to hear his insights. He ran a large organization for 20 years, sold that, got into speaking. He's been doing that for over 2 decades now. He is a wealth of knowledge, a great person. I'm so excited for you to hear this interview. Here's my friend Scott. Welcome to Market Mavericks. I'm Matthew Eford. Join me as I speak with leaders who are redefining industries in every corner of the market. From startups to established businesses, we'll uncover the strategies, challenges, and insights that drive success. Get ready to be inspired by the Mavericks who are shaping the future of business. Welcome, everybody, to Market Mavericks. I'm Matthew Eford, your host. I have with me my friend Scott Deming. Scott and I actually met at a Mosquito Joe annual conference many, many years ago. And I'm so excited to have Scott on to share. He's a world-renowned speaker, and I'm so excited for him to come on and share with us, our audience. So, Scott, somebody who doesn't know you, what is Scott? What's the roles that you have? What's the business that you're in?
Well, currently, for the past 20 plus years, I have been a full-time speaker, trainer, uh, author. I've written a couple of books, business books, and I travel all over the world. I've got clients in Australia. I've got clients in
Wow.
Asia. That's what I do now. It's what I've been doing for the past 21 years, 22 years. Before that, I'm going to really age myself here. But before that, for 20 years, I owned a national advertising and marketing firm. We started off very small,
Okay.
one person, quickly grew it over a course of a couple of years, had 6 or 8 employees. And by the time we were done, we had close to 100 employees doing
Wow.
millions of dollars a year in revenues. We're running programs for Fortune 500 companies like Carrier, Benjamin Moore Paints, John Deere, the Scott's Company, those types of clients we were running national programs for.
Wow.
So I sold that in 2003, and I got into what I'm doing now, and which is, again, the speaking and the training. And do you want me to tell you why I did what I did and how I got
That was actually going to be my question. What was why did you go from one to the other? What was that like?
so the last probably several years of the agency, uh, we had um, we had a lot of clients. We were doing these programs. Think of it of a franchise program where you've got thousands of locations all over the country, and they're all running the same campaign. So we were managing campaigns like that,
Okay.
and a lot of the locations were doing very, very well, and then we had a lot of locations who weren't doing well, and they of course blamed the advertising. So we kept getting these phone calls. The advertising's not working. The advertising's not working. So in defense of the agency, I started to kind of run some investigations. And so I was going
Nice.
out and I was visiting these different locations, not only the ones who were doing poorly, but the ones who were doing well. And this is what I discovered. I discovered that the ones who were doing well realized that the advertising was merely an awareness vehicle, period. End of story. You drive people into my place of business, I'll take it from there.
Okay.
Ones who weren't doing well thought the advertising was the magic bullet. Once we pay for advertising, game over. We should just be profitable and successful. So that launched a training program that I ran. So we had other people doing it, but I started it.
Okay.
And I would go out and visit with all of my clients, from CEOs to warehouse managers to salespeople out in the field. And I started teaching them, training them on how to create a brand and a culture that didn't just meet the promise we were making, but beat the promise we were making with the advertising. So when I started doing that, I was doing that more than I had people back at the agency running the creative stuff. I was doing that more than the advertising. And I thought, this is it. I mean, and I'll
Wow.
tell you what was like an epiphany. I realized that advertising is cool, but it's such a small part of closing that whole loop
Yeah.
of success. What really matters is when people understand, from leadership to sales to operations to customer service, how to create a synergy, a consistency, and a culture that customers love, that they want to buy into. So that's when I said, this is where I want to be, and this is what I do.
I love that. And so, what
Yeah.
what was the overlap between when you started that to when you sold and went out doing the training, speaking? What was the overlap there before you actually sold? Was it a few years that you were doing the training, or
Yeah, it
was it?
was. No, it was a few years. It's probably, oh, I don't know. It's probably 4 or 5 years.
Wow, yeah, cool,
Uh, and then when I knew that I wanted to do this full time, we had a production department, a graphics department, creative, and all that. So I really had a leg up on a lot of people trying to launch into the speaking business because I would go out and speak, and I made sure my production director had camera people
sure,
videotaping what I
yeah,
was doing. And I started collecting this, and I went and sat in an editing studio and with a production director, and we put video together. I had my graphics department, my creative department put a whole, promotional materials together. So while I was still running the agency, I was already ramping up and getting ready.
cool,
So I kind of had a head start on this, but it took off fairly quickly, the speaking business, not as quickly as I wanted it to. But I remember speaking to an agency, a speakers bureau rep, and I said, "How long is this going to take to start getting some traction?" She goes, "Give it 3 years." And I think I did better than 3 years,
nice, yeah, cool.
but
So
I was very,
talk us
go
through
ahead.
the first. We love to hear the first kind of 12 to 24 months, right? We have a lot of folks that listen to this that we would classify as a entrepreneur. They're in the corporate America. They're wanting to make that leap into business ownership.
Right.
Any kind of insights into that first 12 to 24 months that you can remember back when you're starting your speaking business, or even back long to when you started your agency? What advice would you have in that first couple of years?
Let me talk about the agency because honestly, after 20 years of doing that, financially, I was pretty secure. I had a lot of
Okay,
knowledge, I had a lot of contacts, I had banking relationships. So it was,
sure,
again, I was already, I had the momentum. So I didn't have to do a whole lot of learning. The learning curve had been done. But I will tell you this, I just wrote an article. It was just published last week for Entrepreneur Magazine on, do you want to take the leap and
yeah,
go from being an employee to being an entrepreneur? And the first half of the article almost sounds like doom and gloom, but it's not. It's just basically saying, buyer beware. I mean, this is not an easy thing to do.
yeah,
And those listening who are either in the middle of it, they've done it, or what, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I I always knew when I was in college. I swear to you, when I was in college, I knew I wanted to have my own business. I don't know what it was. I remember sitting there and I would, you know, take my initials and create logos and
cool,
while I'm in class and company names. I just had this dream. So I was a creative director for a small ad agency in upstate New York. And my boss was a horrible human being, was a tyrant. And he swore at people, he threw things around.
wow,
And one day, I mean, I couldn't deal. And we had one little child, like a 1 year old at home or a 2 year old, hardly any money. We were renting a farmhouse, could barely pay our heating bills. And I remember calling my wife and saying, I don't know what to do. She said, quit. She said, we'll figure it out. But honestly, she said, ever since you started working for this man, you've not been the same.
wow,
So for me, it was like I was forced into it.
yeah,
I wouldn't have done it then, but I had such a horrible situation. I walked out. I walked out and we started rolling pennies and nickels. And, that's how I got started. So here's what I would say. If you're going to do this, or you're thinking of doing this, unless it's a desperate, something you need to do, make sure you've got some financial foundation. Like
okay,
the rule of thumb is make sure you've got enough money for 6 to 12 months of living expenses without a penny coming in.
gotcha.
Don't do what I did. I mean, we literally were trying to figure out how to buy groceries. So if I had to do it all over again, I would have done it, but I would have waited a little longer. The uh, the other thing I will say is, even today, to this day, and I'm an old guy, I still seek out mentors.
Okay,
You are never, ever, ever the smartest person in the room. If you think that and you believe that, you're going to get way ahead. So what I used to do is I would seek out people with experience and I would befriend them, and I was very sincere with them. I need help if you're willing to help, and then we would become friends. I had this guy who was a VP at a bank that we became fast friends. This guy picked up the phone whenever I called. He advised me on everything from employee relations to finances and everything else that I needed information on. So I would say if you can find a person or a group that you can lean on, because you're going to need to lean on somebody.
Yeah.
This is not an easy ride. Uh, but I will tell you this: as I'm sounding doom and gloom, the rewards are phenomenal. If you're willing
Amen.
to take the risk, just the feeling of you basically name your own destiny. You are the person in charge of your finances. You are the person in charge of your hours, your success, where you go. So as long as you believe in yourself, the rewards are truly fantastic. But it's kind of a tough road. I would also say don't try to do it all yourself, even though you're going to be forced to do almost all of it yourself. But things like if you're not an advertising expert, don't try to figure it out. You just don't have enough time, and you'll
Sure.
make some costly mistakes. You're not a financial person. Get somebody to advise you on your finances. Make sure you've got good legal advice. There are so many little things that you don't see until you're halfway in it, and then you start going, I should have
Yeah.
done that. But just so my first couple of years, maybe up to 5 years, they were pretty rough. I mean, they were pretty rough. I remember I borrowed my first loan. I think I was a $5,000 loan I borrowed from my mother's rich aunt.
Okay.
And, she gave me a $5,000 loan at 10% interest, and I had it paid off inside of a year. And then when I started getting enough revenue and having enough of a history, I was able to go to a bank and say to a bank, hey, I need a loan, I need a line of credit, whatever. But the feeling of not having the money to carry you over if you come into a tough spot is a bad feeling.
Yeah.
So,
It definitely is.
yeah, make sure you got those funds.
No,
But go ahead.
so talk to me about when you come in and consult. Obviously, you're doing that with large scale businesses, some of them small. What are you consistently seeing? Let's say over the last 12 months, when you come in and consult with someone, what's something that you consistently see that you're having to help coach them on, train them on, teach them on?
It's funny that you use the word consistently see, because the thing that I consistently see is inconsistency.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Companies have, without even trying, they just have these silos. Every department seems to be doing their own thing. People who don't touch a customer don't believe that they're involved with the customer experience. They don't believe that they impact the brand. So you've got people who are really passionate about it and they're doing a certain thing according to what the mission is. And then you got a bunch of other people who are just kind of going, you know what? I don't even know what we're in this for, but it's a pretty good paycheck and I just can't wait till Friday. So what I discovered was that inconsistency goes all the way to the top. The leadership doesn't really have, um, they just don't have the ability or the interest even to figure out a way to transfer their purpose, their mission,
Okay.
their passion, their
Okay.
their their vision of what the company is. So I do a lot of, in fact, I do this thing on a pad where I'll draw a square and I'll draw a triangle or a pyramid, and I'll say, which do you think represents your organizational structure? Not a corporate,
Org
hierarchy, but
chart. Yeah.
and most of them will say a square, and most of them are right because what I do is I say, okay, here's what an organization that is shaped like a square actually acts like because of a lack of leadership skills, and I put little hash marks at the bottom. These are all your employees, and then I say because leadership has not really truly transferred the vision and gotten people excited about what they're trying to accomplish here, these employees all have their own agenda.
Okay.
Because why not? Because they don't know what they're doing here, what they're in
Sure.
this for. there's no meaning behind my job. There's just, I know what I do. I've got a job description, I've got a salary and a title and all that stuff. So I say, now watch, because there's no real common goal at the top, all the employees during the course of the week, the month, the year, and I draw straight lines going all the way to the top. And I say, and here's what happens. This organization is as far apart at the end of it all as they were when they started.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. Yeah.
And here's what happens. Other companies can come in and headhunt, infiltrate your good people without even a big effort. Uh, Customers don't feel there's anything special here, so customer loyalty is at an all-time low. A lot of things that happen to it. So then I draw a pyramid and I say, now watch this. Because the leadership had the ability to get everybody on board, and I draw a circle at the very pinnacle, the very top of the pyramid. I said, because leadership had the ability to transfer that purpose and that passion, watch what happens. And I draw the hash marks at the bottom. But as you draw the lines, they're all getting closer and closer the longer they're together.
Yeah.
They're all working towards that one objective. And I say, this is a strong company. Cannot be infiltrated, headhunted. Your customers will love you because you all believe, think, say, and act the same way. The consistent, if you want to, I'll tell you what, for anybody listening, watching this right now, you want to kill a brand, kill your momentum, be inconsistent. That'll just destroy you, like right out of the gates.
Sure.
Inconsistent message, inconsistent customer experience, inconsistent brand delivery, that'll destroy your brand. So that's one of the things that probably the most popular thing that I see when I walk into an organization.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating. And I love the analogy of the pyramid triangle versus the square. It's such a visual representation of what happens, right? It happens in your organization. So somebody's sitting there, they're looking at the organization, they're saying, hey, we have our core values. We went through that as a leadership team. We went through that as an organization. We set our core values, but I still feel like we're kind of in the square. Maybe we're a little trapezoid, but we're not really at the pyramid level. What advice would you have to somebody to help them make that shift to get more focused? The leaders listen to this, the CEOs listen to this, the business owner is, and they're saying, I want that. I want that from our organization. I want to be the pyramid. What advice would you have as a next step to get there?
Well, first you have to understand that a lot of times, even if the leader really does have the ability to impart the vision and all that, you will have employees that just don't care.
Yeah.
And I think the first thing you have to do as a leader, an owner, is you have to recognize where that is.
Okay.
And a lot of times what we do is as owners, because we're afraid to lose a good person, we're afraid it's going to impact the customers or the other employees, we hold on to that bad kind of an influence in our organization way, way, way too long. And it becomes a cancer. So I think you have to, recognize, are there other issues just besides me? Because I feel like I'm doing the right thing here. Are there other issues? The second thing is this: listen to your people. Because just because you believe what you're saying and what you're doing is effective and is supposed to be working, and if you're not getting the feedback and the input from those around you, that does two things. One is it just isolates you from everybody. They don't feel they have a voice.
Okay.
And two, you're going to miss out on a lot of good ideas. I said this before. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I always say, if you want to really truly get to that point, to that pyramid, then what you need to do is you need to encourage healthy debate in your organization.
Okay.
Let people know they have a voice. Let people know that you want their ideas. However, if you're the owner, you're the leader, you have to make it very clear that I want your input, but at the end of the day, you have to understand somebody has to make the tough decisions, and that's me.
Yeah.
If I make the decisions and it goes well, you are all getting the credit with me. This isn't just on me. However, if I make a decision and it goes badly, it's on me.
Yeah. I love that. It's my failure. It's our success.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So in kind of continuation of this conversation, right? I mean, culture is something that's a hot button issue. It gets talked a lot about. You've written about it. You've spoken about it. I know that a lot of people, that's something they say, hey, I want to increase my culture. I want to change my culture. I want to grow my culture. Let's dig in a little bit deeper on that. As a business owner, they've got 10 employees. What advice would you have for them saying, hey, I want to continue to improve my culture within our organization?
The first thing is make sure that you are always acknowledging and recognizing the efforts of those around you.
Okay.
Um, you know, Jim Goodnight, the founder of SAS Computer Software, and he
Yeah.
still owns a $4 billion company. He started it, he quit his job as a statistics professor at North Carolina State. First
Wow.
year in business, he did $138,000 in total revenues. Now they're doing somewhere around 4 billion, and they make software. That's all they do. They make software.
It's amazing.
But Jim Goodnight, one of my favorite quotes, he said, treat employees like they make a difference, and they will. So he said he recognized early on, he goes, and I know that this is on me. He said, as the owner, the leader, it's on me. He said, every night between 5 and 6 o'clock, 95% of my assets drive out that gate. He said, it is my responsibility and mine alone to make sure that all 95 of them come back the following morning. And he said, not only do they come back on fire. And then when a person interviewing him said, how and why? And that's when he came up with a quote. He said, I learned if you treat employees like they make a difference, they will.
Yeah.
People have quit jobs with nothing lined up because they cannot figure out why they're doing what they're doing. They never know if they're doing a good job or not. They never know if they're doing something wrong because they don't hear anything. And when I say acknowledge and recognize, it doesn't always have to be a win. It doesn't always have to be because they did something phenomenal. If they're putting an effort into it, you have to acknowledge that. You have to say, good try. Awesome. Let's do it again. We'll try it again. We'll try it again. But you know what? I so appreciate your effort. This is what this company's all about. People giving a damn. And
Yeah.
so, that's what you have to do to really start building that culture. Let people feel they have a voice, acknowledge them, recognize them, treat them well, and treat them like they make a difference. And you're
Yeah.
going to see a difference in your culture.
I
But
love
it
that.
has to, as the leader, you have to walk that talk. You can't just say it. You
Sure.
can't put it in a memo and then just let things go. You've got to constantly walk that talk.
Yeah. Cool. And I love that. And it's all about the team that we're building.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Right. I mean, there's so many great quotes out there. I love that example of treat them. I love that. So when you're
Oh,
looking, go ahead.
I just want to give you one more quote. I'm sorry to interrupt
Yeah,
you.
please. No, go ahead.
But Howard Schultz had something very similar when he was asked during an interview, Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, when they were exploding and it was a mega brand on a global scale. They kept saying, how did you do it? How did you do it? You took a commodity like coffee. How did you do it? And he stopped the person. He goes, you keep saying, how did I do it? He goes, it wasn't me. He said, it was we. He said, if you knew the number of shoulders I stood on to get to where I am today, he said, you'd be blown away. He said, here's the secret to a phenomenal culture. When you're surrounded by people who share a passionate commitment around a common purpose, anything is possible.
Yeah.
So again, that's why I say you got to get everybody kind of involved and let them know that they've got a voice and they start understanding why they're doing what they're doing, and everybody kind of buys into it.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the questions that I love to get to, Scott, is we love to learn from people's mistakes, right? It's great to learn from successes, but when we hit a failure, there's so much learning we can find in there. So let's talk your speaking career. Over your speaking career, if you don't mind, what's kind of a failure that you would say, this is an experience I went through, but here's a lesson I learned from it?
So well, first of all, Matt, I've never made a mistake. So,
Well, it's nice to meet you because I've made plenty.
I've made many, many and plenty. So here is probably the biggest thing that I did that came back to bite me. And to this day, I even talked to my wife about it. About, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I can't remember when it was, but I was screaming busy. I had 3 gigs a week. Sometimes 4. I was just on a plane all the time.
Wow.
And a lot of my business goes through speakers bureaus. When I first started my business, 80% or more went through bureaus, and then the rest of it was direct. People found me
Okay.
either on the web internet, or they saw me at an event like you did, and then
Sure.
a few months later they call me, hey, I saw you at an event. So when I started getting real busy, the majority of my business was now coming from the direct. And there were 2 or 3 bureaus who were using my name in their keyword searches so that when you search for Scott Deming, I pop up first inside of these
Through them. Yeah.
bureaus.
Wow. Yeah.
And I had, in one week, 2 people after I got booked through this bureau tell me, well, I wanted to book you directly, but I thought I had to go through your agent. I said, I don't have an agent. And they told me what they did. And so I started searching my name. I called these bureaus and I said, get my name out of your key phrases, out of your
Sure.
search on your SEO, because I'm losing direct business to you. That, with those 2 bureaus, and I'm positive there's a very close knit community, because I lost business from those 2 bureaus, and the bureau business overall for a good couple of years slowed down.
Okay.
And I told my wife, I said, I've got a feeling, because I was so busy and I thought this is never going to end. And then, wouldn't you know, uh, not too long after that, COVID hits, and now nobody's doing anything.
Yeah.
And then try to get back into good graces of a couple of these bureaus that I truly made mad. It was a long haul. We're back now. I mean, now we've got our relationships again. But I think what happens is, when you're really busy and you're feeling really successful, sometimes you'll bite the hand that feeds you,
Yeah.
because you don't think you're ever going to start tanking. You don't
Yeah.
think you're going to have a decline in business. That's probably my biggest mistake. Got a little full of myself, uh, made a couple of pretty bad decisions, and I think it hurt me for a pretty good long time.
Sure.
But again, like I said, things are fine now. But it wasn't it wasn't an enjoyable experience, knowing that I really upset a couple of my closer, bigger bureau partners.
Sure. So the lesson that you're pulling out of there is what?
The lesson I'm pulling out of there is, no matter how screaming busy and successful and profitable you are, it's just a matter of time before you hit a slow patch, or you need somebody. I mean, I literally just got it in my head that I could do this on my own. I didn't need the bureaus. And that's just not true. I
Yeah.
I need everybody who can bring business my way. When we get really, really successful, sometimes we get a little heady, we get a little full of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I would just say, and what's kind of strange about that, Matt, is that's not me, like, personally, to the core. That's not me. I'm a pretty humble guy. I'm a very honest person. I've never stolen a thing from anybody in my life. But we can let that success
Sure. Go to your head.
dictate and dictate some pretty bad decisions,
Yeah. No, that's fantastic advice, and I appreciate you being willing to share that. So, talk to us about your pivot during COVID. I know a lot of people that were in business before COVID. They made changes. How did you survive the COVID time as a speaker?
Well, I did virtual stuff. I've got a whole studio here, and I've had a studio for long before most people did, because back when I had the agency, I started building the studio just to do
Yeah.
some editing stuff. So I had the equipment. We've upgraded the equipment several times, but I've got, like, I'm sitting here in half of my studio. I've got another whole green screen studio with lights and cameras over there, where I stand up in front of a green screen. And so I started doing virtual stuff, and I started doing online training, video training programs. And I had a couple of clients that just kept me very, very busy, every single month, doing everything from training videos to newsletters to podcasts, all of it. And video interviews with their employees.
Wow.
So that kept me busy. And then, as it started breaking, it started picking back up again. I didn't really have to pivot, because I just kept doing what I do. I
Yeah.
just
Cool.
did it a little differently. I
Yeah.
just did it internally.
A little bit of a different format that you're doing the conversation.
That's all it is. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just instead of being on stage in front of a live group, I'm in front of a camera in front of a bunch of people watching like they're watching right now.
Yeah, I love that. So talk to us about the books that you've written. How did that come about? What was kind of the start of writing your books?
Um, I always thought that I was a decent writer. As I said, I was a creative director, so I used to write copy
Okay.
and I used to design ads and write commercials and all that. Um, but I never wrote anything of length, a couple of articles. So I was doing a keynote presentation at this event that it had like everybody from business people to agents to college professors and students, and it was at this auditorium in New York City, right in Manhattan. And so when I was all done, I had people come up and talk to me, and a woman walked up to me and she gave me a card. She says, "Do you have a book?" And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "Well, I'm a literary agent. I think you need to write a book." So she said, "If you ever consider it, give me a call." A couple of years later, I said, maybe I need a book just because, as a speaker, it just gives you a little more credibility.
Sure.
So I wrote my first book titled The Brand Who Cried Wolf. And the book is about the difference between advertising and marketing awareness type branding and emotional branding, where you really truly build connections,
Yeah.
create emotional connections, where a customer, when they think of your company or they think of your name, they get a visceral response. They get this emotional charge. So I wrote that book because I felt like I needed a book. That was in 2000 and, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2007. Wow. So 2007.
Okay.
Then in 2013 or 14, I wrote my second book, Powered by Purpose. And this book actually was driven by a real purpose. We lost our granddaughter. She was 1 month shy of 3,
Wow.
and
Sorry
a
to hear
TV
that.
fell on. Well, thank you, but a TV fell on her. This was in 2012, September 11th, 2012. A TV fell on her, crushed her, and killed her. It's a big tube style TV.
Wow.
So my wife and I started a foundation, and we started, like everybody else, we felt this burning, burning, burning purpose. And when I started doing the research to discover how a freak accident like this could happen to somebody like us, I discovered that inside of every 2 weeks in the US alone, a child is killed exactly that way by a tip
Wow.
over accident. Every 2 weeks, every 20 minutes, a child is sent to the ER from a tip over related accident. So I felt such a burning purpose. And at the same time, I was on a plane and I started writing these ideas down. I was on a plane heading to a client meeting and I was doing a leadership keynote. And I started thinking about the lack of leadership skills, not for everybody, but a lot of leaders. And when I say skills, they lack the ability to impassion, empower, and inspire their folks because they don't really have a real deep purpose, a deep desire to make a difference in
Sure.
what they're doing. So I thought, oh, you know what? There was like this kind of synergy. So I wrote the book, Powered by Purpose. And it's basically a book talking about identifying your values, staying true to your values, surrounding yourself with people who believe in those values, and then getting everybody on board with the purpose behind what it is you're trying to accomplish.
I love that.
And my father always said to me when I was growing up, he goes, you're going to be tempted. You're going to, to make the wrong decisions, to take money that doesn't belong to you. You're going to be tempted in so many different ways. He goes, Scott, your North Star.
Yeah.
Just stick to it.
Yeah.
Don't ever veer away from it. So that's kind of the impetus of writing that book.
I love that. So
The
tell
first
us
one I
about the.
felt like I needed it. The second one I felt like other people needed it.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me this. When you are throughout your life, you've talked about mentors, right? We've referenced that a lot on this show. Give us some advice on something. Give us an example. Excuse me, an example of something you've learned from a mentor, how it's helped you leverage your business, grow your business, scale your business. Can you give us an insight? We really drum that. Find somebody to mentor. Find people to surround yourself with. The Bible says, "He who walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm." Right? We're we're becoming like the people we're hanging out with. Finding somebody further down the road from you is very, very helpful, very successful. It helps you get there, helps you get the direction you're wanting to go. So, can you give us an example of how you've used that for yourself?
So I'll go back to the bank guy, the bank vice president.
Yeah.
Um, when I had to make a really tough decision, I knew I needed to fire my one of my employees, and it was my first time ever firing anybody. So I was talking to him, and he said, "Scott, if you," he goes, "I'm not telling you not to be a good person, a person with compassion or empathy, without empathy." He said, "What I'm saying is, if you run your business with your heart, your business will get a heart disease."
Uh,
He said, "You need to make some decisions that hurt." So I fired her. A few days later, he and I are sitting outside of the office building, and we're having lunch. And I just told him, I said, I couldn't sleep. I thought I was going to throw up. I said, I can't stop thinking about her. And then he said to me, no matter how many times you do this, he said, if it ever gets easy, you need to walk away.
Amen.
He said, it does not ever get easy. He goes, but if it does, then you're not the person you're supposed to be. He said, then it's time to walk away from leadership. So he taught me really that tough decisions are gonna come, and they still do. Tough decisions always come down the pike for you, because it's just the business is like that. You have to make decisions that you're going to watch a person cry. You're going to have to make decisions that is going to maybe financially hurt you for just a little while, but then in the long run, it's going to be better. But again, you have to make those decisions, but you don't have to become a callous person without any empathy or compassion
Yeah.
in order to make those decisions. So he taught me that, and I practiced that, and I really didn't have to practice it because it never got easy for me. It was just something that I knew I had to deal with, and then I would deal with it, and I'd lose sleep that night, and I couldn't eat dinner, and then I'd get better as the days went on. But that's probably the one thing that I could say a mentor really helped me with. I
I
mean, you
love
could
that.
talk to mentors about finances and all the other things. I've had accountants that became my good friends, but in terms of like really being a leader with a purpose and with the ability to influence others in a positive way, that stands out to me.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's an excellent example, an excellent distinction of leadership. In leadership, we're called to do the hard thing. We are.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's just hard. And so, but as leaders, we're called to do the hard thing. So, Scott, we're coming up to the end of our time. I really appreciate your generosity in sharing. I've got a couple of questions I'd love to kind of end on. Number one, what's a book that you've read, say, over the last 12 months that's really impacted you?
Well, it's over the last 12 months, probably Atomic Habits. I know it's
Okay.
not a brand new book, but I love the book. Um, uh, I love reading books on the experience. There's another book that's been out for 13 years that I've read as well. It's called Engaged.
Okay.
It's a very good book. If you have employees, it talks about how to get your employees engaged so that they can engage the customers. And I've always that when I do my trainings, I say, look, there's no way a customer on the outside is going to feel any passion if they don't feel it on the inside. So
Yeah.
it's a book like right up my alley. But I wrote down a couple of books that I think are probably really important reads for anybody.
Sure. Yeah,
Uh,
please.
the first book is The E Myth Revisited.
Yeah, Michael
And
Gerber. Hell yeah.
yeah, it's just, I mean, it- everything about that book is what everybody who's thinking of starting a business or in business, either just starting out or been in it for a while, it's a book you need to read. One of my favorite books, I read it several years ago, was by Jim Collins, Good to Great.
Okay.
And again, he spent 5 years with his colleagues, and they researched all these different companies, and they found these common threads of what makes a person go from good to great. Not only that, but how do they sustain that?
Yeah.
So they talk about the different personality types, and so that's a really really good book if you think that you truly want to establish this thing, whatever you're into it for right now, for a very long time. I mean, because quite honestly, it's a big investment of time and energy and emotion and all of that, and you want to make sure that you're sustainable at it. And so those are a couple of real good books.
I love that. Yeah, I appreciate.
I would be remiss if I didn't say two really, really good reads.
That's there you go. Yeah,
The Brand Who Cried Wolf and Powered by Purpose.
there
Yeah.
we go. That's fantastic. I appreciate
I
the
just got
pitches
done
there.
saying I'm not going to self promote.
No, that's perfect. That we will. I will definitely put your books in the show notes. I'll be picking them up myself. I'm excited to read those. Um, and I loved to your point. I mean, Michael Gerber. We've referenced him several times on this podcast. It
Yeah.
is what a great entry level book. I love that he wrote that book. I love that it's a great resource. A lot about systems. A lot about getting out of your way as an owner. Great resource. But the Jim Collins Good to Great. I mean, he also wrote Built to Last. He's. I love the research side of that book. That
It's incredible.
it's not just theoretical. That he's able to pull out, here is business A, here's business B, here's the change that they made. They're
Yep.
tracking along pretty consistently. Changes made. Here's where business A went. Here's down where business B went. A fantastic read. Thank you so much for referencing those two. So around here, we love to focus on commitments. It's a little bit what we consider stronger than goals, right? If I go to a conference and I tell my wife my goal is to stay faithful to you, that doesn't give her a lot of good feelings when I leave. But if I tell her, hey, I'm committed to staying faithful to you as I am, that just feels like a little bit stronger. So we love to kind of get into that mentality of what's something within our business that we're committed to doing. So Scott, what's something in this new year that you're committed to doing in your business?
I hope this doesn't sound hokey when I say it, but it's the God's honest truth. I'm my commitment this year is to get in front of as many people as I can get in front of, and to transform and impact as many people as I can transform and impact. You've seen me speak. I don't just speak on all things business.
Sure.
Uh, I talk about you cannot be successful in business if you're not a successful human being.
Yeah.
So my mission this year and moving forward is to just do as much as I can do in front of as many people as I can get in front of, and somehow looking out in the audience and seeing heads nod and notes being taken and knowing that I made a difference.
Yeah.
If I move the needle on for their business, holy cow, that's awesome. But if I sent somebody away saying I need to spend more time with my family, or I need to be a better person to my spouse, then that is like that's the victory right there.
I love that. I love that distinction. I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, last question. What's a piece of advice you wish you would have had 10 years ago?
Oh, gee, 10 years ago. Gee, so I've been doing the speaking stuff for 20. I'm halfway into it in 10 years. Geez, Matt, I don't mean to sound aloof. I can't. A piece of advice I wish I had.
Maybe before you started your speaking business. Let's take it that way. What's a piece of advice you wish you would have had before you started your speaking business?
I will tell you this. Back when I did have the agency, the piece of advice I wish I had was to figure out a better work-home life balance.
Okay. Talk to me about that, please.
I was just so bent on growing my agency and growing the business that when the kids were little and they're growing up, I spent so much time away from home. And at the time, we all think this. You right now, even though you know it's a fact, you're going to get old and one day you're going to die, you don't believe it. Like you just feel like, this is going to be me for, this is what it is. And that's goes back kind of to what I said before about when you're being really successful, you're riding that wave.
Sure.
You don't feel like it's ever going to end. But I was spending so much time away from home and I just kept thinking, it's they'll be little kids again tomorrow. And my wife and I, we had a boat up on the St. Lawrence Seaway in a marina, and there was a pool in the marina, and we had our kids, and my oldest, who's now 41, he's going to be 42 in April. My oldest was just a little one. He was probably 10 or 12. And I'm in the pool throwing him around. And our other kids are, the baby's on my wife's lap, and she's now 30. And I'm throwing my son around the pool. And there's this old couple laying in lounge chairs. And the older gentleman, he says, son, come here. And I thought he was going to yell at me for throwing my kid around. And I said, yes, sir. He goes, those your kids? I said, yes, they are. He said, you love them, huh? I said, oh, yeah, of course I love them. He goes, can I give you some advice? I said, sure. He said, don't just love them. He says, because I promise you, you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and they're all going to be grown and gone. Boom.
Wow.
So after I heard that, I was on my way to work one morning and I was listening to a child psychologist on the radio. And he said, the biggest mistake we make as parents is we dismiss our children's trauma. And he said, we don't do it on purpose. We love our children. We do it because we consider their trauma insignificant.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I started thinking about all the things that I do, thinking how important I am and my life is and my job is. And I was so deep into it that I was having a hard time turning that around. When I eventually turned it around, the kids were already getting older and I still have a wonderful relationship with them, but it was something that I probably wish I knew I was going to feel like I do today. Back then. I could have made it when I could have made it.
No, I admire you a lot for sharing that, right? And it's hindsight's always 20/20, and it's a great reminder for those. We do have a lot of younger entrepreneurs, myself included. I have at home I have a 7, 4, and 2-year-old. So like I'm in the thick of it, and so being able to you mentioned earlier about the success of a business. Part of what you can do is create the schedule that you want. So for my wife and I, we've done that. We've worked very, very hard, and I will work at different times during the day, at night, early mornings, weekends that allow me to be engaged with my kids. And it's because people like you have pulled me aside and said, hey, kind of like that guy at the pool, hey, don't miss this, because it's so easy to miss it. And I really appreciate you sharing that very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
So Scott, somebody's hearing this. They want to get in touch with you. They want to follow along, maybe on LinkedIn. Please don't give out your cell phone number. That's not what I'm expecting you to do. But how do they get in touch with you if their organization wants to bring in a trainer or a speaker? They're going to a conference that's in need of a speaker. How do they get in touch with you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, but probably the best thing to do is just go to my website, scottdeming.com, SCOTTDEMING1M.com. And there's contact information there. You can, reach us by email or by phone. There are a lot of video clips so you can see me in action, the type of content and energy that I bring to a conference. So yeah, if somebody's interested, give us a shout. I'd love to talk.
I love it. Well, thank you, Scott. Again, I appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, everybody, for following along here at Market Mavericks. We'll see you soon. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Market Mavericks. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to take your own adventure to the next level. Don't forget to follow the show to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, share it with others who could benefit. And hey, if you know a market maverick who has a story that needs to be heard, please drop their name in the comments. We would love to bring their insights to the show. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and leading with purpose.